good afternoon on what is a bright, chilly day. It is Thursday, December the 2nd, and I'm back in the Read Nook with a cat who is not ours and a nice hot cup of tea. And, of course, I've got things to unbox. The next thing I'm going to look at is this. Basically, the Temple of Elemental Evil, the classic Advanced Dungeons and Dragons scenario, which comes with bags of history and bags of content. This is the 6th entry in the original Adventures Reincarnated series from Goodman Games, which began with B1 In Search of the Unknown and B2 Keep on the Borderlands. And what Goodman Games does is they take those original modules and present them, okay, as they originally came in the books. I mean, they don't come as the little folios as they did back in the day, but the nearest they can within a larger book. Several versions of them, basically marking the differences. They add commentary and history and so on, and then they present versions of them that are written for the world's my favourite role-playing game, Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. So essentially, this is the 6th, so they're bringing classic campaigns or scenarios back for essentially the players of Dungeons and Dragons today. This is, as I say, a 5th edition conversion on classic homage T1, the Temple of T1-4, the Temple of Elemental Evil. Includes extensive historical commentary, and boy oh boy do I like extensive historical commentary. As a deluxe 2-volume set, and it's conversion by Chris Doyle, Rick Maffei, and Tim Wodzinski. Apologise if I've mangled that. So what's on the back? Let's have a look to show you. Okay. Evil Born Anew, a mini-campaign that takes characters from level 1 to 7. The village of Hamlet thrives again. Years ago, this quaint village nearly fell prey to a great neighbouring evil. The nearby Temple of Elemental Evil, a grand edifice of wickedness, was defeated after a great battle and thrown into ruin forever. Or was it? Bandits have started to ride the roads again, and there are other ominous signs afoot. It is whispered that the demonic evil at the heart of the temple was not truly conquered, but merely imprisoned. Even now, agents of evil, malevolent beasts, and far worse creatures are conspiring to return the temple to power and enslave the surrounding lands. Hamlet and the neighbouring ruins may hold clues, but not everyone is to be trusted. Surely danger lies hidden in this idyllic region. Sharpen your swords and axes. Purchase your iron rations and tinderboxes. Don't forget at least one 10-foot pole. Great adventure awaits those that dare confront the Temple of Elemental Evil. This book collection is a homage to the origin of adventure that began decades ago with T1, the Village of Hamlet, and T1-4, the Temple of Elemental Evil. Herein you will find high-quality scans from multiple printers of the original 1st edition adventure modules, plus commentary by gaming legends. Full 5th edition conversions of both adventures are included, as well as a brand new adventure material that adds a new wilderness, encounters, expands the village of Nob, fully details the evil elemental nodes, and provides 5th edition updates of many original magical items, monsters, and spells. This is a fully playable mega dungeon and mini campaign. Many hours of classic style adventure await you. So, let me see. So, Temple of Elemental Evil began essentially T1-4, the Village of Hamlet is where it all started, back in 78, 79, written by Gary Gygax, and it described a village which was in peril and really kind of set the benchmark, essentially the standard by which you kind of go with all village in peril scenarios, and there are so many of them, even from ones from TSR as well. So, well, that's what they did with that, and essentially the adventure, basically the players investigated, and they went up to the much feared Moat and sorted out the bandits and found some evil there and below the ruins of the moat and the castle, and then people waited for T2. It never appeared. So you move on 3 or 4 years, and what you have is T1-4, the Temple of Elemental Evil, which contains the 3 next parts that never appeared in single scenarios. Okay, and it remained a classic and basically a super module. And really, it was a far more original super module than the others, because like the A series Against the Slave Lords and the Giants versus and the Drow series, essentially, which did G1-3, D1-3, and Q1, because they collated early adventures. Okay, this one had much more original content from the get-go because it hadn't been printed before. So this one, in subsequent years, it will be revisited in 2001, something like that, with Return to the Temple of Elemental Evil by Monty Cook for Dungeons and Dragons 3rd edition. And later on, there is a Hackmaster version called Temple of Existential Evil, which I'm trying to get hold of. And lastly, Wizards of the Coast, obviously the owners of Dungeons and Dragons by then, visited the concept with there's a Temple of Elemental Evil board game, I believe. So what we've got is 2 books. Now, I've already split the plastic on this because essentially I tried to do a video on this earlier and failed because I ran out of space. So let's open this up and get into the first book. And what we've got, that's volume 2, so I don't want to look at that just yet, but I do want to look at this one. So this is nice and sturdy. I've got the grey book, which is volume 1 of the 2-volume set. And this is the cover that graced the front of the T1-4 Temple of Elemental Evil. And inside, it's basically a crack album. Got a really nice piece of artwork. That looks like an attack by an Ortog. But I can't make it. But it's the great thing about Goodman Games. You've got access to a really wide range of artists who support Dungeon Crawl classics and do really great OSR style artwork. And then opens straight up with grumpy old D&D and the trip to Homlet. Essentially, with an introduction by Brendan Lassalle, which is really nice. I'm really looking forward to reading that because Brendan's a really nice guy, and you may have come across his role-playing game X-Crawl, which does essentially turns Dungeons and Dragons dungeoneering into a gladiatorial sport in sort of like an alternative Roman Empire in the current, basically in the here and now. It's sort of like pretty bonkers. Then we have Memories of Homlet and the Temple That Never Was by James Malasiski. Again, another commentator upon the old school Renaissance and the old school via his blog, Grognardia. If you've not read any of that, I recommend that you do. Then Gary Gygax's TSR, Temple of Elemental Evil. This will look at the formation and the creation of the campaign. That'll be interesting to read. John Peterson is well known as a historian of really role-playing, in particular Dungeons and Dragons, through Playing at the World and the more recent Game Wizards. If you're looking for an interesting take upon how role-playing became role-playing, then his Elusive Shift is worth reading, and I have done a review of that. Then Building in the Shadow of the Temple of Elemental Evil, Harley Stroh, another stalwart of Goodman Games. And these are really going to be really interesting essays to read, basically just for the commentary and their input. And the same again for the Chennaults, Explore the Temple of Elemental Evil by Stephen Chennault. The Chennaults are basically responsible for Trollord Games, who do Castles and Crusades, one of the really first big retro clones. And then we have a really lengthy interview with Jeff Easley, conducted by Chris Artenson. And he's one of the artists. Jeff Easley is basically known for his artwork for Dungeons and Dragons, in particular. There's some fantastic pieces in here. Many of you will recognise that as the cover of many a Dungeons and Dragons title. I think that's possibly off the. It might be in the cover of the basic Dungeons and Dragons. That's the the Dungeons and Dragons starter set, which is a really good piece. And again, we've got some really nice bits of black and white artwork as well, because obviously he would have done covers and internal pieces for these books, and of course, and also for his contributions to Dragon Arts. Now, there's an interesting that would be fantastic to see basically the original Adventures of Reincarnated, basically for them to redo the whole of Dragonlance. That would be utterly amazing, I think. Unlikely. Then we go into the Temple of Elemental Evil original publication, and here we begin to get the reprints of the original ones as they were. So here's the cover of, this would have been a later edition when they're actually going full colour, the covers. So, and we've got a, just see, okay, so we'll just show you here we've got scans of the original. So you've got the original cover, then the later one, and then the collected Temple of Elemental Evil. And what's immediately obvious is just the contrast between the original adventure and this book. It's just to see how compact that text is. Whereas you get onto basically that later on in the book, open, clear and easy to read, whereas not so much this. Certainly not for older eyes, I would suggest, let alone younger eyes. So this really runs only to a few pages, but it's quite detailed, lots of flavour to it. Then we get into the ruins of the Moat house, infamous location for battles there. Now I've never played this one. I would actually really like to play it at some point. Don't know whether I will. And then we get into, we've got a reminder of just how good the cartography is in these modules. These are the maps of the buildings, and you've got a fully detailed location here. So you've got the traders' establishment and Church of Cuthbert, and basically here's a base of operations for the player characters, and you've got plans of all the buildings they can enter. And then we actually get into sorry, my finger's a bit cold, so it's a bit difficult turning these pages. Did I tell you it was 3 degrees? It's 3 degrees out here. Yeah, sorry, here we've got this ruin of the Moat house as originally was. And then beneath that you've got the dungeon level, because there was only one dungeon level, and there was going to be small areas below that as well, but they never came to part. They never appeared here, but they would appear in T1-4. And the other thing is, you've got here is it says flip open for gatefold map, because let's not forget something, this green cover would be cardboard, and a back on it, and then inside you would have a map like that. Just hopefully you can see that. There we go. There's a village of Homlet, complete in detail, ready for the players to visit and explore and make their base. Yeah, and of course that's a piece of new artwork that's just new for this piece, because it's completely done in a style that I don't think TSR would have done, because that's much more of a visceral style. So we get into T1 Temple of Elemental Evil, the big beast as it was. So we've got them here, and this is again reprints to the temple. This is much easier to read though. Given a full book, the text is a bit more open, a little easier to read, not quite so heavy. And then we get to part 1, describing the village of Homlet, just as the original T1 village of Homlet did. See, lots of basically, just general standard open text. Very easy to read, as I say. Then we get into the ruins of the Moat house. Basically, more time, more space, a bit more detail to that. Then we get into the dungeon entry, and then we've got an interlude. Homlet to Nob again expands the adventure with wilderness elements too. And then we've got some of that Japanese artwork. And then the players begin exploring the ruins of the Nook and the ruins of the village. There's an earlier piece about which we saw again, Jeff Easley. And then we go into the ruins of elemental evil with the temple. Just a nice piece of sort of like dungeon corridor, doors off it. You're going what's down there, and then dungeons, and then just basically a bit of a mystery piece of illustration there, and then we get into the dungeons and the elemental evil afterwards. So quite lengthy this section, as you would expect. So I'm just leafing through. We're basically down to dungeon level 3 there. More artwork by Jeff Easley. Really nice pen and ink work. And strange illustrations. Basically, presumably those are sort of like connected to the elements. See if we can just find some maps of the nodes. There we go, there's the illustration of the nodes in the okay. And we've got appendices in here that gives the details. I use the demigod, some Cuthbert, lesser god as well. Well known from basically the areas of Greyhawk. Appendices of monsters with things like Zugmoy's Beloved and the Juggernaut. What's we got in here? There we go. There's the detailed map for where you put it in the World of Greyhawk. And we've got that same map again, Village of Homlet. And here the maps have been redone, but they've been essentially done in the style, rather than 2D, they've been given 3 dimensions. Very much like they did at the time, because they first really did it with like Dragonlance, DL1. There we go. So what this book now, okay, again, we've got ruins of the Moat House, Knob, Tower ruins. Then we get into the temple itself and dungeon level 1. Basic dungeon level 2 and 3. And further down, level 4 and the elemental nodes. And again, elements of this have appeared over the years in Dungeons and Dragons, because we've also, if we turn over the page, we've got the earth elemental node and the fire elemental nodes. So you've got really elementally themed dungeon levels. And then the water node, water as well node, and then the back cover as well. So after that, we start to basically the book starts talking about, you know, the overview of the adventure, chapter 3, and this is the adventure. This is the adventure overview of the adventure for the 5th edition. Foot conversion. I don't know where he's going. Just getting up the stretch, I hope. And then we're talking things like treasure in the original publication, what might be found in the Village of Homlet, examples, getting started, players' backgrounds, and then we've got to see the same Greyhawk map. We haven't got through the first book. There's so much in here. We've got adventure hooks, and then they've got a prelude, encounter on the road to Homlet, which will get the characters involved on their journey to the village and the start of the campaign. Far more heavily illustrated. We've got the village of Homlet itself, with rumours and strange encounters, actual illustrations of the buildings proper. Again, nicely done. I really like this. Like the look of this book, the artwork, lots of character, and then we have a flip map, another one, and this shows. This is another map of Hamlet. Here we go to shoot that one. Not a great deal of difference, but essentially just a reinterpretation, just tidying up. I'm zooming. There we go. So it is. So it is chilly out here. And then we've got basically we've got the Inn of the Welcome Wench. Not a title for an inn that really kind of has aged well, I would suggest. And whether or not that's the Welcome Wench, I'll leave that for you to ponder. Basically, the maps really, again, there are three-dimensional, again, with an image of the welcoming wench. And again, basically, so not all the maps are given that treatment, so the traders' establishment is fairly simple. And also, you know, you've got some ideas, some advice in there to make a deal for when they're role playing in that location. And then basically we've got various buildings like described, giving some detail, all the way down to we go on to the ruined Moat house, and then we have an actual illustration of one of the famous encounters of the Moat house, which is the attack by the giant frogs. Again, we've got a Ruins of Moat House illustration again, map, and then we've got the dungeon map again, which will, again, you recognise from previous versions. And really, this is really just doing justice to, you know, the original T1, the Village of Hamlet. Another piece of artwork there, graphic, yucky thing. Giant crayfish of some kind. And then we've got Wandering Wilderness Adventures, and this is the section here that will take the characters from. I mean, if you look back at the map of the region wilderness map presented previously earlier in this book and in the earlier modules, this has been a bit more clarity there, I think, than the map given there, so it's easy to read. The giant crayfish, I stand corrected, and we actually go on to we've got extra locations, I believe, and random encounters. So we have a layer, the griffin layer there. Sorry, there we go. So basically, this is a long video because it's such a big book. We've got a knoll ring fort as well. And an abandoned farmstead, cave, so abandoned farmstead, and also a key to the winged owlbear cave. Well, really, that's a really nice illustration of the winged owlbear. Really like that. And an elven camp. So there we go. There are two maps there. All locations. So you've got, I mean, even just with the village of Hamlet and the original Moat house, you've got a bit more in there than you had before, and that's you know, great. It's great to see that basically reappraised, redesigned, just brought up to date, and made playable for the current version of the rules, which, you know, and we've got, when we go on to Nob. I mean, so we've not even got to the second book yet. There's just so much in here. So fully detailed section village of Nook. Some nice illustrations, as such as the a taxidermist. There we go. Before we get onto the temple itself, there we go. A decent illustration of that. What's that inside? Oh, that's a nice addition. Yeah. So, and then we've got all the maps reprinted at the end, and that brings that's just book one. In book two, essentially, which carries on number-wise from. So this starts at page 381, and this gives the dungeons level 1, going down one by one. So I'm not going to go through this one as much, and certainly because. So just to see if there's anything extra in here. But what we've got at the end, really, because you've got all the dungeon maps, the new illustrations, like that's, I just like that. I mean, nice range of artwork, really capturing sort of just how foul sometimes dungeoneering is. Sometimes it can be, you're just going in a dungeon, you never quite get an idea of what it's really like, because it's all in your head and it's fantasy, and it's like, it can be a bit, I don't know, clean, and a nice sense of sort of looming threat there as well. So what we've got at the back again, we've got so all newly basically the maps have been redrawn, as you can see. So here we've got level 4. Before we get to the different nodes, and these have been, I said, they're much cleaner to read, easier to read than in the previous version, and we get down to the last bit of the book. Just show you just how much we've got in here. So this essentially that covers the Temple of Elemental Evil as is, and then the last bit is just supporting material. So you've got the deities, demigods, and demonesses. So we've got Zugmorgtoi there. And if I'm pronouncing the name, well, okay. Ayuz again, and Cuthbert. So they've basically got an illustration of Ayuz and then Cuthbert. Characters, so we've got ready to play characters. A load of these, so basically your players can just take a character, start playing, or it's a ready supply of beginning characters. Non-player characters as well, like an inspiring druid, badger captain, bayonet leaders, and so on. Lots of these in there. Lots and lots of those, in fact. Such as Jero Ashdoff, medium humanoid, and probably basically probably a druid, I would suggest, and then half druids. So lots of those NPCs and pre-generated characters, pages and pages. Keep going. There's something else. Appendix, new monsters. So Algoid, Askamoid. Basically given a page each. Nice illustrations. Awakened Celt Babu, Basinaroid. Dracolisk. There we go. Potentially, probably the first appearances of it, and then that's what we've got in the end. So all the way down, monsters, lots of monsters. Pages and pages of monsters. Appendix D is new magic. New items of magic like the double crossbow and the falchion and the Fauchard fork and Gurrot and glaive Gizarm and man catcher. So all the stats are there. Got nice illustrations there on the right. Backbiter, spear, belt of holding, incense of meditation, necklace of strangulation, all described in here. Orb of golden death. So lots of content, and basically all new spells as well, and Charm Monster, Crystal Bright, Push. So essentially, all of this is presented for Dungeons and Dragons back in '84 and so on. This updates it to 5th edition, and then we've got the handout summary of which things like a summary of the village of Hamlet, so on, giving the support for the referee, dungeon master, and players. Basically lots of player handouts. Dungeons and Dragons wasn't always a game with a lot in the way of handouts, but a big campaign like this deserves them, and there are some nice handouts in here. So that gives a bit more of a physical form to the puzzle I showed you earlier, which is and then we've got all the maps presented at the end, as well as a glossary. Wow, it's big enough to have its own glossary. Not very long, but here ends volume 2, and that's it. That is it. So that is altogether one hell of a package. You got this, and you've got months and months worth of play. People have been really waiting for this one because they've been impressed by the adaptations of the previous volumes, basically we'll wait to see what Goodman Games could do with a mega dungeon like T1-4, and they seem to have done a really good job. I would recommend getting this if you're looking for a classic old school style campaign but want to run it using the modern rules. Temple of Elemental Evil, 6th entry in the original Adventures Reincarnated series. So pop down to your local game shop and grab a copy. It's heavy, but there's a lot of gaming in here. Anyway, thanks again for watching another unboxing in the Nook. If you've enjoyed this, please do click the like button down below. And if you've got any comments or feedback, I appreciate you posting those. And lastly, if you want to be alerted to yet more unboxings in the Nook, where you will see me out here with a parcel or a game which I will unbox and talk about to the best extent of my knowledge for 10 minutes or so, or in this case 30 minutes, all of course accompanied by a cat who is not ours. He must have got cold, he's just rushed back, and a nice hot cup of tea. There we go, giving you a nice look. Please do hit that subscribe button. Thanks again for watching. I'll be back again soon with another unboxing in the Nook. Bye for now.